My name is Laurie Kennard, I'm a member of the steering committee, and courtesy of Dick Blick, I'd like to introduce Joe Gyurcsak, Dick Blick's artist in residence for the past 18 years. Joe is a landscape painter, a still life painter, and a figurative painter. He trained, he trained at Parsons School of Design and the School of the Visual Arts in New York, and has studied with many of today's leading representational painters. Joe has exhibited across the United States, has won numerous awards, and his memberships include, among others, the Oil Painters of America, the American Impressionist Society, and the prestigious Salmagundi Club. For more than 25 years, Joe has taught, lectured, exhibited, and judged fine art. To his students, Joe is a gifted teacher, able to convey complex concepts and techniques simply. The PAPC thanks Joe for being with us today and imparting some of his 25 years plus of wisdom and knowledge on plein air painting to this humble group. Welcome, Joe, to the I Heart Plein Air event.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Is it on?
It is on. Go ahead and put it up a little. Put it up there.
Hello, from New Jersey. Hello?
Better?
Is that good?
Yeah.
Or should I just talk? I
Just
got a loud mouth anyway.
Yes. It's when you turn around that it
Okay,
registers.
I have like so many things to say. It always happens like that. I could plan all I want, but I really look for you guys to make the magic in all this, because I could be saying a lot of things that might not mean anything. So I do invite questions. We are gonna start a painting. One of the critical things about painting that's often overlooked for people that are struggling to put a good painting together is this little study thing I did here some years ago. It was a combination of studying notes from Sergei Bongard and Howard Pyle. I was fortunate to get notes from Howard Pyle, a big folder of them from the Delaware Museum. And I often wondered how these great illustrators, because I started out as an illustrator, how did they teach these people to do what they do, men and women? They were so great coming out of these small little schools, Howard Pyle School, and they could paint really anything, a lot of times without even having the subject in the room, which is amazing, right? So I really began to think about that, and I came across some notes that really were pretty profound. And somehow I took Sergei Bongard, the famous Russian painter that taught in Nevada and taught in California for many years, and I took the two of these things together. It took a while for me to absorb it, but I figured Howard Pyle had his own take on how to set up a palette, and Sergei had his own point of view about how to set up a motif of a painting to make it absolutely as strong as you could. So the title of this is Dynamic Color Contrast, and it basically deals with the acronym VIP, Value, Intensity, and Temperature. Okay? So in order to build the most dynamic painting that you want, it would be more advisable, especially if you're a beginner, to select a situation where the painting is either more dark value and a little bit of light, or a lot of light and a little bit of dark. That's for starters, because you'll have at least a little bit more going on there, interest, imbalance, and activity that the viewer can be interested in. And then as we move from there, we talk about color, intensity, because color is a big deal. And ongoing research that I do to teach these things is going to be involved with this today. But you can have a painting that's either very rich and with a little bit of dull color, or you can have a painting that's a lot more dull, undescript color, and then a little bit of rich color. But when they're equal, boring, people, come on, come on. So then you have to make that imbalance there as well. So you could pick this any which way you want to create your painting, but this will greatly help you. I wish somebody would have showed me this in the beginning. But there was no place to find the darn thing. So then on the bottom is the temperature, so we can see paintings that are relatively very warm. You can look around the room, you can try to pick them out, right? Relatively warm, and then with a little bit of cool contrast to it, or something that is very, very cool overall with a little bit of warmness in it. So if you have all three of those things, and by the way, this also helps you to mix color. I have a program, it's called Color Theory for Painters, and this is part of the program. I just pulled this out because I felt this is very important to plein air painting today. So you can see how you can set that up and really and ask yourself, is my painting doing that? You know, or am I getting too equal with stuff, or are things getting a little too boring? So now people often ask, what's the best light to paint in? Is there really an answer for that? I don't know. I was thinking about it over and over before today, and I was thinking, well, how do I really answer that for the public all the time? Because the best light to paint is the light that will, if you're plein air painting, if we're talking about that world, that will stay consistent for an hour and a half. That's the best light. It doesn't matter what the light is, but that's the best light, right? So we have to train ourselves to work quicker outside unless we visit a subject many, many times. So that's involved as well. But if you're looking for an answer about what the best light to paint is, the more consistent light situations are the best. Number one being a nocturne. It's not going to get light anytime soon, right? Yeah. And then, like Richard Schmidt right here. I mean, I'm very grateful to be here today in this. I always had this on my bucket list to be here. You know, I've been all over the country, but this is great to put on here and say that I actually did class here today. But he often picks moderate light, moderate situations where the light is not either dramatically light or dark, but it's a very moderate light, and then he selects his accent colors. That's what we're going to talk about that today when I do this painting. But then there's a situation where I put up these 3 little sketches that I did. And I had an opportunity to go across the country, and I had to go for Blick one time. They said, well, you're going to 30 cities to do this educational program. I'm like, 30 cities? But I said to my wife, okay, I'll see you in like 3 months, you know. Yeah. But I went, and she said, well, what are you going to do? Like, you have 2-3 hours of the thing during the day, and then what are you going to do the rest of the time? Well, I'm going to see any museum I can see, and I'm going to bring small panels to paint. Well, how are you going to do that? You need all this stuff you need. No. I'm bringing a little cigar box, and I'm going to put it in my lap, no tripod, nothing, and I'm going to open it up and look at a scene. I'm going to paint it, and I did that in 30 cities. So these are some of the results of those paintings, and they weren't meant to be like finished paintings, but to capture certain like atmosphere, a certain fleeting light, what have you. So the first one was early morning. I just opened up the box. I'm in Providence, Rhode Island, and I see, you know, this really beautiful kind of misty, hazy morning, and that only lasted, all these situations only lasted like 45 minutes or less. So I did that. And then the next one is in Tucson, Arizona, and I was on the side of the road, and the light was fleeting. It was at the end of the day, but it was more direct light on the subject, this little adobe situation. And then I try to do that and capture that. And they're just, they're not perfectly rendered, but I brought them because they're honest, you know. They have an honest amount of the light, the situation, it's believable. That's what you have to do first in your painting. You can always add more detail later if you want, but you have to capture the sincerity of the situation, right? So, and then the last one here is on the Jersey shore, and this was, again, very quick because the light is, oh, jeez, Joseph. It's going fast, so it's going away from me, behind those trees, and I'm at the shore where we always go, Ocean Grove, and I'm trying to capture this fleeting light in this situation very, very quickly. So the point is, you set up your painting method and you work as best as you can to try to capture the most important notes, going back to this thing. What does it look like? How can you push it? All this business. Okay, so today, they didn't start the clock yet.
I'll start in 3 minutes.
Oh, so I'm ahead of time.
You're ahead.
Well, anyway, I can fool around a little bit there. So Sebastian Maniscalco is from here. So my wife and I went to go see the comedian, and we're standing out there in Philadelphia at the big arena, and he sold out 20,000 people. And I said, look at that, this lady, this older lady, this younger lady, all these Italian people are yelling at each other, and I'm going, these are our family, this is our family, because even though I have Gyurcsak as a name, I was raised Italian. My mom was named Panicella. So my father's from Hungary, but I was really raised Italian. My mother-in-law's Italian. And so this guy from Chicago, he's fantastic. I had such a good time. I don't know if any of you have seen him, but he is excellent, man. He just reminds me of all the crazy things that the Italians do. I had an Uncle Guido, too, so.
What was his name?
Sebastian Maniscalco. Anyway, so today I'm doing a panel, and I started, everything is always changing when artists as well. I'm working on these, this is a little heavy for playing out, but who cares? Big deal. So it's a really good board, and it's a Blick Premier Artist panel, and it's very smooth. It's totally opposite of what I've been doing for a couple of years. So I started to switch gears, and I started to investigate, and I used to texture my canvases and then paint on top of them, because I was switched to acrylics for quite some time because I was having problems figuring out how to go back to oil without using any mediums, because I was having migraine headaches and stuff. I just want to tell you that part. But then, so I was asked by the company to test these, because in my past life at Gyurcsak, I developed all the brushes, the canvas lines, the panels, and all the paint lines for Gyurcsak. So I know about all these manufacturing aspects. And I was asked to test these. So I started testing these, and I really like these things, because I take them and then I do a burnt sienna tone on it. And I find this color, by the way, to be really good for painting outside in almost any scene, because it gives you, like, again, Richard Schmidt here, it's better to work from warm tone and then put your cool tone. So this is very nice to have some scene, your scene start in a warmer tone. Any questions about that? Okay, so these boards are a little absorbent. That's a problem for Joe G, because I don't like that. And I found a way around it, and I take a little bit. Some of you, when you were sitting here in the beginning, probably wondering what I was doing. But I take a little oil, just any kind of linseed oil, safflower oil or something, and I rub it on the surface.
so you don't, so you can take it on an airplane?
I'm not worried about bringing it, holding it with me.
Okay.
I put it in the, if I need everything, like I'll be going out to San Francisco to the Plein convention thing, I'll put it in my suitcase, but the most important thing is put with that your MSDS sheet.
What?
Your safety data sheet of the product.
But I mean, you can't drive a linseed oil, right?
You could, yeah, actually you can't. I think you can't bring that one in.
Right, so it's flammable, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, you could bring safflower oil,
You
or,
ever use
Solvent-free
walnut
gel?
oil, safflower oil?
yeah, you could bring those.
Okay, thank you.
Or walnut, you're right, that's good, or poppy. Yeah.
Not from or regular. I think you can get it from the grocery store. I've bought some from the grocery store. Because I do it buy a lot and that's what it's always a pain in the butt to put some.
So the question is where to get the walnut oil?
Well, I mean, Blick sells all that stuff, so, you can do that. And by the way, should have said that in the beginning, I'm here because Blick, you know, it's like they like to sponsor these wonderful educational events. When I came aboard, they didn't have a resident artist like Gyurcsak, so I had a spot in the company. They liked what I was doing, and they said, keep doing it. So I'm really grateful for that, you know, that they follow the same thing that Gyurcsak wanted to do, was provide really good, sound educational programs, not talk about just how much something costs. That's very annoying to you guys, and I want to always make an experience that is a learning experience. So I'm trying to get this darker color first. And yesterday I was at the museum. So at the museum I saw the sergeant painting he did of these boats. And this idea here is going to follow that today. Sergeant worked from moderate tones. That the motif we had before, if you could just envision, Howard Pyle said, a moderate dark and a moderate light, and then an accent dark and an accent light. That's where painting really is. I mean, that's what it's about, not about 42 million values, you know, in the painting. You really got to develop a painting that really has these set values, okay? And if you do, and they're strong enough, I always say to my students, you don't have to have all the detail there, but I want to see a strong structure.
What colors are on your boat?
Okay, I'm working from a secondary nature here, a very unorthodox way today. Working from a violet, a green, a red, a Naples yellow, and another just our new the colors I worked on for the last 3.5 years, the CAD free colors. So I had the CAD free yellow medium, the Naples yellow hue, the CAD free red light, and then a permanent green and a violet. That's my palette today. Okay.
Which green?
I'm sorry?
Which green, sorry? Which green do you have?
Brand?
No, green.
Oh, green.
It just went too fast. Permanent.
What is it? Permanent green.
Thank you.
Okay. more time is spent in the beginning to set it up than the painting itself, really. I mean, that's what it is. So I like the bristle brush. I got to keep that the odorless covered because it's not good for me. I know that. So we're going to design this. Maybe we should do that. Yeah. Maybe if I leave that top part up, there's more light on it, right? Okay. All right, so we're going to design the scene going back to what we were talking about before. I like to do this in the beginning and train my students to do this. You know, don't go there. Don't go here. Don't go here. And then anything else you could do that will help your painting is good. So I like the bristle brush. I'm working with the Rhenish. We still have the same brush, the Rhenish Gyurcsak brush. They're very good. You hear this scratchy, and I like to scratch on a very thin layer of paint in the beginning. So if I'm in a scene, I know I read in the history book, if you're scratching the paint, the instructors would yell at the students, "Don't scratch the paint on, put more paint on." But in the beginning, for this technique, that's what I'm doing. I'm just scratching it, scratching the surface, right? Literally. So you need to work quickly. And okay, so when you're looking at a scene and you're trying to envision a scene, it can be overwhelming. So Mary said, make sure you tell them like all the things you bring and this and that. So yes, this thing is very good. When you're outside, I have found out, and in my workshops, I train the people to have a reduction glass. So this is what you call a quilt and print viewer. So when you look in here, I see all of you are shrunken. So if you can see the scene smaller, it's better for your artist mind, especially when you're working on a panel. How do you get all this in? Well, you look here and you see it smaller, you can work better. If you see too much and you don't have enough space to get back, say if you're on the sidewalk in a scene, you're going to have trouble. So you need to look through something to reduce it in your mind. Reduction is very important, not enlarge, reducing so that your mind can transfer this to the painting.
What is that called again?
It's just a quilt and print viewer.
Can you get this?
I think you can get this, no, I think you have to get this on Amazon. And I think it's like $9.
Is it the same as looking through binoculars backwards?
So is it like viewing a thumbnail? Does it make it like you're
Look
looking
at
at a
me.
thumbnail?
Okay, anyway, I better stop goofing around. Okay, so then I tried to get this scene starting with the darks, the moderate darks, right? And I promised I was going to show you the pile. So this is what the paint looks like in the beginning. Right? I mean, you'll come up later, I guess. I don't know. You can see it, right? So that's how it looked. Then we get it going with the big brush. we're gonna just map this out very quickly. Because you know, when we're outside and all this stuff is going on, we have to work very quickly. So I get this mapped in like that, okay? Then from these piles, I can take other brushes and just moderate the pile to be warmer or cooler. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm doing exactly that. So I just want to get like something, I mean, I'm painting very freely here. And I've just tried to map out some of the stuff that's going on in the painting. And also, I always tell my students, the way that you hold the brush is important too. A lot of people paint like this. And a lot of people use a little paint and they're like this. And it doesn't work, people. You gotta, first of all, if you physically can stand and you can hold the brush sideways like this, if you want a lot of action in your painting, that's what you need to do. You need to move it around, you know. So I'm just starting to build layers here of this scene. We just build it in. So I have a moderate dark, these moderate neutral colors. And there was the Allison Skinner painting in the museum. That's a good one. You know, I always like to, when I'm traveling, I like to point out in the museum that you're closest to, what to go look at, what I've seen. So when you go back there, look at it, take note of that painting. It's a beautiful painting, and it's very neutral, like what I'm doing here today. Very neutral tone. So this is very subtle. When Whistler was painting in the beginning of the painting, and all the students were in the room at Academy Carmine in France, half of the students couldn't see what he was doing. They were like, there's no change in the painting. And it's the students in the back who were further back, they could say, oh yeah, I see it. But the ones that were close up, they couldn't really see it, which is interesting. So now I'm building a dark. I'm taking the violet and the green and the red together. Very simple, right? And I'm going to get a really good dark going, right? Okay. So now I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush. I'm using filberts, I guess, and flats, but they've worn down. I like them worn down. So I'm going to start to map out a little bit of this scene best I can while talking. And here's a thing, a very important thing to realize. When you're painting, big problem for young students that are learning, they expect to put paint on the surface of all this other paint, and they expect to just that it's going to work. It doesn't work that way. You have to get more paint each time. Like if I go over this, I'm going to be blending it in. I don't want it to blend in. So I have to layer the paint, right? So I call it weaving the paint or layering. So I have to put it on in 1 or 2 strokes, right? That's a big problem for plein air painters. They when they're out there, they don't know that they're, you know, the professionals like Steve and all of us that were doing it for a long time, we know that, but not the younger students. It seems like they just make a mess. You have to put it in. See, now the windows are there, people. They're there. But if I kept brushing over it, okay. So You need a lot of paint. Soroya came to Chicago in 1911. He came to Chicago, Soroya y Vestida. And he was famous because Mr. Huntington, who was friends with Sargent as well, and his wife, they discovered Soroya in Spain. And they said, oh, this guy is really a good painter. Why don't we bring him to the museum in New York? So they brought him to the museum in New York, and they had him there, and then eventually he had a sold-out show. Sold all his pieces, and in 1909 he made over $200,000 for his paintings. That's a lot of money in that time, right? So then next time he came, a lot of students were going to asking him to go to Chicago to the Art Institute. So he walked into Art Institute and he said, I can't do it. They're like, no, you're going to teach us. I can't do it. This is the walls, no good. It's no good. It's drab color. I paint outside. I don't paint in studios. Studios are for storing paintings. I paint outside. I need white linen sheets all the way around. And that's what they did. They put it all up so that the light would bounce. Because his paintings have a lot of light action, right? So if you ever go to the Hispanic Museum in the Bronx, up there in Yonkers or wherever it is, you'll see these paintings. The first time I saw them, my heart pounded. I couldn't believe it, how beautiful they were. You know, they were just amazing. I mean, they do have the light, the light of the day in them. They're just amazing, and they're very gutsy. He wasted no time. He puts down very modern marks, not unlike the other painters of the time. He didn't worry if the paint dripped or, you know, was making drips. He left the drips. I love that. He didn't worry about that, you know. He just painted, and you could see the heart, his heart in the painting. Okay, so. So you start to map this out. You can see, like, it starts, like Sargent said, it comes out of the fog. You know, I love that description. Like one of the students, he didn't say, one of the students observing Sargent said, the painting slowly, as they were watching him do it demo, lifted out of the fog. And I love that. You know, like he was working through it, right? Like it slowly came out, right? That's what we want. That's what we want to do today. Have this thing slowly come out. Okay, so I need more paint, see? And, oh, that's what I started telling you. See, my mind is all over the place. My wife says, you know what, in the demo you talk to me. But Soroya was in Chicago, and he was frustrated with this student, and he wanted to make a point and about the paint. And so he took the whole contents of the tube and put it out on the thing because he wasn't using enough paint. And then he proceeded to take the paint up with the brush, a big slab, and throw it on the canvas, showing them, this is painting, not little thin things. You know, like you have to put it down, right? You have to put it down. Okay, so these people are, you know, they're very suggestive in the way that they're moving. If you're having problems with that, it's good to do figure drawing class. You know, like go to figure drawing class and, you know, go to one where they do 5 and 10-minute poses and just bring one color, a dark color, and try to sketch and learn how to put the people down. Just very suggestive. Because I mean, we could sit there and render all these people if we want, but we don't have time for that. So and even in the real world, while we're playing our painting, they have to be, like, show some kind of movement, right? And something going on. And then you will need to carefully delineate a few areas to make the painting believable, though. Somebody was going to ask a question.
What colors did you just mix for this dark that you're putting on?
I mixed just the green, the violet, and the red together. And they get a wonderful deep dark. You'll see, you can come up, like I always do, and let the people see the palette at the end. Or I don't know what Mary's plan is exactly. If I come back to this and do a little more on it later, I don't know what we're doing. But I'll try to get as far as I can with this for now, you know. So, when you're standing in this is New York 53rd Street or something, when you're standing in a scene like this, and I would probably, I'm doing it, I told Mary, I'm going to do it larger because the students need to see it. But if I'm out there for real painting and I don't have the photograph, I mean, this is just wonderful to keep it like so still for me, right? But out there, everything is moving. So I'm going to work smaller outside, if you're wondering. Oh, what does Joe G do outside? 12 by 16, what this is. It's a little big for an hour study. And how do we know that? You learn that from experience, right? You learn that from years of painting. I went out for my first, it's on the podcast with Eric. That's why I was hoping he was here today. Really wanted to see him. We had a good time doing that podcast. But my first experience outside was in 1990. And I was already an illustrator. But when I went outside, I didn't know what the heck. I didn't even know what to do. And my friend Steve Kennedy from Pennsylvania, who was trained by Nelson Shanks, was understudy for Nelson Shanks for 6 years. He took me out the first time and showed me like at least what to do. And in 1990 was the first time that I actually experienced. We're doing good. I might be going too fast. Okay, so yeah, I was out there, and that was the first time I was able to actually see the colors, that they made sense to me. It was like a revelation that day. I was so excited. Not that I did a great paint, but it was the first time I mixed colors better. And that was significant. And then, like I said, I've been going out ever since then. And when it warms up, my students who come to my studio are like, oh no. You know, like they know March is coming. If it's a little warm, I push them outside right away. They hate it because it's cold out here. Oh, shut up, just do it. But, you know, you got to get out there. I did take the challenge, Kevin McPherson's challenge, and I did 100 paintings in the summer, every day outside, and 45 minutes at nocturne every day. And boy, that really helped me, you know, like that really, it really made a big difference.
What size canvas do you work on outside?
I like to work a lot, I'll tell you a little secret about Joji. I like to work on a lot of square composition because for me, that's an easy one to compose, you know.
What size?
12 by 12. I like that myself. And that, you know, Mary and I were talking about, well, you know, like, you have to tell them what the artist's mindset, all these things are part of the artist's mindset. You have to learn what you like. That we're all different in this room, you know. Everybody does something slightly different, right? So we're all very individualistic. And by the way, I am doing a workshop, a little plug, for the Peninsula School, because it's not that far from you guys. I will have a sheet at the end if you want to sign up if you like the way I teach. But this is, I only did this one time before, and I tried it, and it really worked really good. It's called Developing Your Artist's Voice at Fish Creek at the Peninsula Art School. And it's October 21st through the 24th. And what I do in that class is really fun. Because I take the artists, and by the end of the week, they have all found their own little direction. Because there's a series of questions every day and exercises to help develop your own voice. And I did it, and in New Jersey, I tried it at the famous Grounds for Sculpture, where I knocked the sculpture over. And they loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But I'll be doing that there. And there's other list of workshops there. Also, I am entertaining idea because I'm getting offers to go to either France or to Spain, so I want to investigate how many people would do this, so you could put your name on my list if you want to do something like that too, and that would be next year. But I'm starting to build this scene, working from the light and the dark. Remember that motif we had in the very beginning, right? We had that motif where we were, well, let's go over it. Mostly neutral, mostly dark, I selected, with rich color in small areas. That's my plan for this painting, right? So not only am I showing it, I'm really doing it. I'm just not faking it. It's really the thing. So a painting that is somewhat finished is better than a painting that is over-finished, just like a steak. You know, don't overcook it. You know, like it's better to leave more softer edges and a little bit more suggestion. I was mentored, I was very fortunate to have met C.W. Monday, and we hit it off, and for a short time, a year and a half, I went back and forth with him, and this is already when I'm working professional artist, and he really guided me in my painting more, gave me more insight, and I gained so much from him, and not only him, so many other artists. And so when I'm here today, always feel like, you know, well, first of all, a lot of gratitude, and then second of all, like, once you reach a certain stage in your career, it's about giving back as well. So I try to give back to you guys wherever I can, because it is a responsibility to pass on this knowledge, right? So that's all part of it. But you see how the scene is getting more interesting, and it's really starting, something is happening. We don't know, but it's happening. And we're just going along with it. And I'm using this big fat brush, And I'm just trying to carve out literally some good paint passages here. It's very chunky. It's exciting. As I mature as an artist, we're all maturing at different rates. I want to get more suggestive, more abstract in my painting. You know, that's my goal. I aim for that, and I'm making some good breakthroughs recently, so I feel like we're always working on bettering, right? We go to the museum, we see the paintings, how is this done? Well, listen, those people were struggling just like we were. And I'm going to tell you, in Princeton Museum, there's a Sargent painting there, and it brings me great joy because it's of Mrs. Huntington, and Sargent did the painting, and you could see he moved the head 1, 2, 3 times, the shoulder. He must have got pissed off. He kept moving. And I'm like, this is great. There's the ghost of all his mistakes. I thought he did it perfect every time. So it brings me great joy to see all those things. I'm sure his ghost is like, take that thing off the wall.
All right, I think we're back in session.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Chop, chop. So what we're going to do is continue to moderate this. This is one of the most important things I'm going to tell you right now. Once you develop your, and maybe a lot of you know, but it's worth repeating, I repeat for myself. Once you develop your value structure, you cannot violate that value structure. You have to maintain it. So what does that mean? Like if you're in an area like this building and you want to make it a little bit, change the temperature, it still has to remain the same value or close to it. If you start putting, this happens a lot, I see a lot of students do this. If you start putting like the wrong value, you're like, wait, what? Like Sebastian, what? You know, like you can't do that. You can't violate the value structure, so you have to keep it all within there. Soroya was a master at the glow in the shadows. You know, that was a big deal. So he maintained that wonderful, just like we got right there now, the glow in the shadow, right? You always want that nice glow. Now there's certain lights and stuff that are going on in the shadow. That's okay, but you don't want to violate the building structure because it's not getting the light. But I'm going to put like an awning here that I see right over the people, and you know, that's okay because it's receiving light from the sky, right? That's a big deal. I see that a lot. Like a painting's going really well for somebody, and then they like screw the whole thing up by violating their value structure. They're like out of the zone. They knocked themselves right out of the zone. They were doing good. And it's like, wait a minute, I was just over here 5 minutes ago, and you were good. Now what did you do? You know, like that. Like, you know, like wait, what's going on? Well, you went too far. You know, you violated it. No big deal. It's oil paint. So go back and put some darks back in there. You know, whatever it takes. I mean, it's a very fluid situation. If it's acrylic, you could just go over that whole section. You could continually go over it because it dries. You have that ability to just go over it right away, and it'll be a dry note right over a wet note right over a dry thing. Oil, not so much. That's why you have to learn to weave the paint, right? You have to learn to weave the paint, because if you don't learn to layer paint, you're going to always have trouble. If you're too lazy to go back to your palette and grab fresh paint every couple strokes, everything's going to blend right in. So I could develop a person very quickly. Just by having fresh paint to layer over the other area. And then for the light areas, so in the dark, light areas in the dark, the lights that are shining. So I'm going to start with a moderate light, orangey kind of, I don't know, something like this. And I'm squinting my eyes. I'm just going to put some sort of like indication. As soon as that brush gets contaminated with dark color, I have to stop. I mean, this is a thing that I say over and over again. And I get frustrated. Stop doing that. Like, get fresh paint, more fresh paint. And I love it because I work for a paint company. So you have to put a lot of paint out. But it's not a commercial. You have to do it. See, now I'm getting all these fresh, no, I'm sorry, I think I'm blocking some people, but I'm getting all these fresh notes of color on top of those dark colors. But it's a one-shot thing. It doesn't have to be perfect, people. Don't stress over that, you know? You know, it's not, it's a very suggestive thing. Actually, the more suggestive you are about these things, the better the painting will be, especially for the plein air venue. I mean, it's not representational in the way where it's like a studio painting. So you're trying to find your own personal voice in all this, and you're trying to communicate that. And don't worry about like that, you know, it'll find you. And it's just like I said before, like a signature, we'll all sign a check different. I'm going to make this a little bit deeper down here. See, by subtract, I'm going to show you something in this area. By subtracting value here, I'm lightening that up even more down the street. So that's another thing that you can do is, somebody said when I was at the Sound of Gun, what is it like painting and talking at the same time? And I didn't know how to answer it. And they said, somebody else raised their hand. I know, it's like running the marathon and playing a violin. And I said, I love that. That's the truth. Because now everybody's expecting something great, and you're like, you're trying to paint and talk, and it's a lot. I mean, I see some painters that hardly talk, but I learned over the years that could be kind of boring, so, and they lose interest, so why don't we have some fun, right?
Can you say more about weaving paint?
Okay, so you have fine examples of it. We're still doing good. Okay, so you have some fine V art or Vully art, whatever you want to say. He's one of my favorite artists. You have him in the Chicago Museum. And Walter Sickert, they had a beautiful quality about their work. They had layers of paint. Walter Sickert, he trained his students to buy this way. He took a green card table and he put it out. And so he had different stacks of playing cards. And one of the first lessons he would teach his students is to take the cards and toss them out on the table and try to cover a lot of the table with the cards, and then give them a different face card and throw them on top of that, and another face card. So 3 or 4 decks, but you would still see the green table underneath. And this was his lesson for them. When you're weaving paint, you have to see the history of the painting from the beginning. A good painting should have the history from the beginning to the end layers. You should have some scratchiness, some transparency, some semi-transparent, some semi-opaque, some opaque layers. And you should have fine line, thick line. But weaving of the paint is basically putting different amounts of paint in different areas and respecting those areas traditionally that are thinner, that have some shine through them from the very beginning of the paint. You see a lot of these great paintings that we love have that history. Right? Is that? Yeah. Okay. That's a valuable thing. I mean, there's not. I think what the artist mindset today is that there's a lot of different things that can make a difference in your painting, but you just have to be aware of where your weakness is. Okay? You have to find that weakness, and once you find the weakness, then you work on that part. Is your drawing, like, are you a great color mixer, and then you fall apart with the drawing? Or are you great at drawing and you don't know about color? Well, maybe some of these things today help you, like start more neutral, start in the middle, work your way out. That might not work for you. Some people start very dark and go to light. You have to find out what works for you, what speaks to you. When you go to a museum, don't go to every painting. Like that. You drive yourself, you come out with a headache. You have to go to the painting. Hey, like this guy here with the beard, he's calling me. I like that for some reason. I'm going there. I want to see that. I want to understand what that is. Certain paintings will call you. Go to those because they're in line with the way you think. So one of the things that you can do is take the, we're going to use it later on, but you bring a red film or viewer into the museum, and you can see the value structure of the paintings. The first time I did it was at the Carnegie Mellon Museum in Pittsburgh, and I brought the red film. See how I resolved this here very quickly, right? It's just good. So you take a red film like this, and you can look, and we're going to do it later, talking about paintings and stuff. But when you look at all these master works, it's like stripping them down and just seeing the secret of their construction. Right? Because you don't want to know about the color. The color is just messing your mind up. You're saying, oh my God, look at that. No, look at the way the painting was built. Like the first time I experienced this was I put this onto a Winslow Homer painting. And it was a winter scene. And it was primarily all muted color, all neutral tone, all dark, like we talked about with the motif. And then some little area of pure light color. And that was the painting. I'm like, you son of a gun. So you have to unlock the secret. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So you have to learn about how'd they do it? How'd they do that? How was it constructed? You know? That's what you're interested in. Now I just made that road curve a little bit. Just by that one little line. And you could come up in the end and see it again. I'm sure. I'm gonna go to
Joe, can you talk a little bit about cars? What's your approach to painting automobiles?
Well, this one in particular on the scene here, it looks pretty real, and there's only 1, 2, 3 different value changes in it, and it's very simple blocked in. If you're painting it front and the back, it's a lot easier. A lot of these master painters know that. If they paint it from the back in a city scene, it looks very easy to do. If you're painting it from the side and you don't draw the side, the wheels right and all that, it's going to look horrible. So you have to make sure, if you're going to do it from the side, you really have to learn how to draw that in really well, because it's going to look silly. The best view is this one, easy for today. You know, it's kind of like, if you just get the values right, and it's already a car, right? I mean, it's simple, but you don't have to put a lot in there. But if you're doing this kind of semi three-quarter or something, you really got to draw it right, because if you don't, I've seen like really good paintings, like the whole painting is great, then the car, like, you know, like the car is bad. So the painting I did for Plein Air Easton that I won the grand prize, I went out that morning and I saw a truck, and so the truck was sitting right in the neighborhood where I was staying. So I loved that, and then I did a quick sketch of it, and I liked the way it worked out. And so I did a bigger painting of it, and I had 3 days that I worked on it. Now, that's also a debate among plein air painters. You work on it more than 1 day, and all this stuff. Well, I did. I worked on it 3 days. I went back. It was like 95 degrees. An older lady came coming out of her house, and do you need something to drink? And all this. And then on the 3rd day, I was going to finish the painting of the truck, and the truck moved. So then my host was a lawyer in Washington, D.C., and she gave me her house for the week. You know, these people are amazing that support the plein air painters. So I had the house for the week. She said, anything you need, call us. So I called her and said, Karen, I have a problem. I said, in our neighborhood, in the quaint village of Sherwood, I said, I'm painting the truck up the street. And they moved it. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I don't know what she said to the guy, but she said, put it back exactly the way. So I was like, oh, are you looking good? But that doesn't always work. So you have to get the drawing down pretty well. And if you can't add a lot of details, just make sure, that's a long-winded answer for that, but make sure that the drawing is sound, right?
So did you just do one painting for that?
You do as many paintings you want, but you can enter two.
Okay.
Two for the competition.
So what is your approach to competitions like that?
I'm really glad you asked that, because this is a great opportunity to explain where my head was. I got in that Plein Air East in 2007, 8, and 9. Then I couldn't get back in for years, 8 years. My wife kept saying, enter it again, just enter it again. So I kept entering, and the truth of the matter was, when I first started in the competition, even all the plein air painters that were out there were at a different level than they are now. the competition ones. I have continually seen people get outrageously good. So I entered and I got back in. The main difference was I really worked on my skill set for outside painting more, because I realized I had more to do. And then when I did get in, my mindset was, I don't care who's here, I'm just going to do my thing. And that's what I did, and I won it, and I was able to do something that is very humbling. I'm not bragging. There's a lot of great painters. I mean, there's so many great paintings to pick from, but it's just an honor to be in that group, to do such a thing like that. But I worked hard for it. I really went back and really worked on my, just like I was telling you guys before, worked on my weaknesses. And also, probably one of the main things I did was not worry about what other people are doing. I just had fun. And even like today, you know, years ago when I did a demo, I'd be nervous up here and no, just have fun. Let people see what you are on a daily basis if you were just sitting in my studio. I want you to feel like today that, you know, you're just sitting in my studio and we're having a conversation, right? I mean, you don't want me to do anything different than what I usually do, and that's the way you guys should be. You should just be real to yourself. You know, don't change because you're in a different situation. Well, I had to learn that. I was too focused on, oh my God, that painter's here. Oh, this painter. No, you can't do that. If you're in there, that means they wanted you for what you did or what you entered, and because you got in, do what they selected for. I would go down there and then change my whole routine because I got nervous. You got to stick with your program, what you do. They want to see you. In all of this, people want to see who you are. They don't want to see a copy artist of other artists. That's not fun, right? So they want to see you do your thing. So when you're in these things, just do your thing, and if you're honest about it, and you're just doing your thing, it's going to shine. It will shine. You'll see, even if you don't, like I always think of Van Gogh, he didn't have the greatest drawing skill. He didn't have a lot of things that a lot of other painters have that are so great, but what the truth about him is that his heart was in everything he did. So you go and you feel it, you know, you feel that pain or suffering in the painting because he was real, right? When you're real, then you can't beat that. And, you know, that's the way to go, and that's how I feel about them events. So show up, be yourself, and don't get nervous, just do what you do. Don't care about who else is there. Let people see your idea of what a good plein air painting can be, right? Once you get to that level, then you're good. Then you don't have to worry. Let me just show you. I put some signs in it, and you know, all these other things. I'm sorry if I have to stand in there, but I do have to get it in there for a little bit more.
So
I'm gonna put a couple faces on the people.
I have a question about reflections. So you work in different directions to kind of deal with the reflection of the paint? Because sometimes it looks different in one direction than another.
Oh boy, this is a smart person. So years ago, there was a Sargent painting, and it was at the Carnegie. That's a very good point you bring up. Very, very good. And it was a profound moment. There are profound moments when we go to these galleries that are really, as a student, all the time, right? So I see the two women fishing by the pond at the Carnegie Museum. I don't know the name of the painting. But for the first time, I realized, oh my God, he does a brush stroke this way, and then an alternate brush stroke against him. I'm like, how come nobody tells you these things? They keep all these secrets themselves. So you know, it's all part of like learning all these different things that there's so many things to learn. But that's what I love, like discovering that and being able to share that. But yes, alternate brush strokes are key to a really good painting. I mean, he did that a lot in his painting, and it was like, wow, especially in that painting of the rocks. He goes one way on the shoreline with a long brush stroke, and then counters it the other way. And when you see it, you're not really aware of it so much, because a lot of painters don't even talk about these things a lot of times. But that's really great painting, because it creates a little bit more interest in the painting. So if you can make a brush stroke like up and then one down, it's just another element. And
Do you mean over the same brush
in the same area.
Oh, same, but not over the paint? that you just
Well, it
did?
could be. It depends where you want to really make a little bit more action, I should say. Action to the painting. Like, a lot of action happens in the light area, right? So this is a good thing to do in the light area. Maybe you go up, then you go down, or a favorite brush stroke that I use is the one where I take paint up, but I actually grind. It's not good for the brush, but it looks great in the painting. You grind it against the painting, you know, like you go the wrong way with the hairs. I mean, everybody's always looking. For when you're doing a painting, you have to do your drawing. You have to do your composition. Right? You have to get your value structure down. And in an alla prima painting like this, one thing, you have to do all this together. So you have to get all these things functioning, and then you focus on your color, then you focus on edges, and then one of the main things at the end, and it doesn't come in the beginning of stages of when you're a painter, but towards when you start maturing as a mid-range, mid-maturity painter and older, you start to finally let the work speak of you, like it comes out, just, it's you, it's nobody else. Nobody can do the same thing I'm doing here. And that's a great place to be, but it takes a while to develop that part. So that's your surface manipulation. All right, so you want to manipulate the surface in a way that you see pleasing. All right, so let's, oh, we're still doing good. Okay, so I'll just put a little bit more in here, and then we'll pick up the palette. We'll show you the palette.
Can you talk a little bit about your center of interest and how you're designing the overall painting with that center of interest in mind?
Okay, so in this scene, of course, the light is very important. Thanks, Steve, for asking. And then what caught me about this scene was everything was kind of low, consolidated, compressed values for all these areas, and they're supporting. But really, the eye is eventually, the people are walking towards this, and everything is pointing towards this magnificent light, like you have in Chicago, same thing in New York, the canyons of light, like in San Francisco. You have these canyons of beautiful light, and really, in this painting, it's getting really, really chunky right there. So you can enjoy all this, but you're marching over in both ways towards this beautiful light that's there. I think this was like at the end of the day. So, I mean, basically, you're drawn into that light, right? So these lines are helpful on the road. You know, everything. I like to use action lines, you know, to say to the viewer, hey, look over here, look over here. You know what I mean? Like this is actually telling the viewer to look over there, right? So, I mean, and they're done in a nice, subtle way. So, you know, you always are thinking about that too. You're not I'm gonna just paint a little flesh under the face. But you wanna draw the people into the painting, right? So I'm just putting little dashes of something to represent a face. It's really not anything, but one of the most important things that I learned, especially from somebody like Nikolai Feshin, is that the suggestion is more important, and if the value structure and the color and all that business is correct, there's very little detail for most of the painting. You know, I was watching CBS Sunday Morning. I'll tell you, this is a closing part while we're finishing up these little people. And I noticed a very important topic they were talking about, a scientific thing. They were talking about the how the eye focuses, and it caught my attention. I'm like, wait a minute, I really got to listen to this. So I watched it, and they say the eye, there might be a doctor in here who knows, but I never knew this, but the eye sees things, critical focus, about 10%. Sees soft focus stuff about 60%. So that's 70% there, right? And the 30% is abstract. So then I always have had this gift of being able to connect things to other things. So I went back, I looked at Nikolai Feshin paintings, and I always brought this to all my lectures. I haven't done it in a while, but I bring a painting that he did of a woman, and she's sitting in an outside scene, and I project it on the screen, and I have the face covered up in the painting upside down. And the people look at it and they say, what is that? They don't know. So when I turn the painting over and I reveal the face, they're like, oh my God. It's a painting that's entirely abstract, but the critical focus, the 10%, is rendered. If you just find a little area that you focus on, like the car, like we're running out of time now, but that's okay, you get the idea. If you work on that and you just heighten the focus in a couple little areas and you leave the rest semi-focused or even abstract, the painting will be much more successful. It is also more successful to have less hard edges. Too many hard edges in a painting are distracting. So the more soft and only a few accent areas are going to do your painting a lot better. I don't know what else to say. I gave you a lot of stuff now. But I'm going to show you this palette. I'm going to show you this palette. And we'll talk about how to view paintings later when we get to that point. But this, since we've been working on it, we'll close with Whistler.
Can you hold it up?
Well, I'm just going to leave it there for a minute. So it's still organized. It's still workable. So Whistler at the Academy Carmine, he was already famous, so all the students knew, and they were anticipating going to his class. And in 6 months, for 6 months' time, he would walk in and he would look at the paintings and look at the paintings and look at the palette and walk out of the class and wouldn't say anything. And the students started getting discouraged. They said, what is he teaching us? We're not learning anything. He just looks at paintings and just looks at palettes. And some of the students left the class. The ones that hung in there were smart because they finally realized, oh my God, he's trying to teach us to manage the palette. And if the palette is managed, then the painting is going to work. So they started to get that, you know, like they'd never understood that before. And I think that's one of the greatest stories of the artists of the past, because here he is. It was so profound, but he just kept leading them on till they would grasp it. You know, he wouldn't say it. They never occurred to them, but then finally. So the point where I'm bringing that up is if your palate is out of control, Rose Francen is probably the best at this, if you've seen her demonstrate. She will scrape her palate down every 10 minutes. If you can't manage your palate, then clear it out again and set the colors again. I know it's a pain in the neck, but if you can't orchestrate that properly, then you're going to have problems up here, right? So you have to manage that palate, right? Any questions at the end before we put 3 minutes? Any questions?
Your palette looks like you're painting.
Well,
I mean,
good.
that's fascinating, yeah.
But anyway, that's the palette.
Yeah.
And you could come up and see it. I don't know if it's better there, I don't know. But you see those moderate tones in the middle, the dark tones on the left, and the light tones on the right. And it's all being there for a reason. Everything is in its sections. And then it was able to be, I mean, you know, we could keep going with this, but
Could you talk about on that palette, you know, exactly where you laid your starting working session and then the methodology of where you placed your first darks and you drew out from that and then your lights you drew. What was your light? You did your darks and spread out variations of that, and then what? Then how did you do the rest? That's where I.
you have to see, good question, and I'll reiterate it. I don't know, it's, you have to, the way this painting was constructed was find the moderate tones. The moderate, according to Howard Pyle, the moderate light tone and the moderate dark tone are separated enough that there's a line between them. But it's not that far apart. And that's the trick. Don't go too dark, because then you have no room to put your accents on, your accent light, your accent dark. So in this painting, when we constructed a moderate light and a moderate dark, and we laid in the buildings and put that, it's very abstract in the beginning, there was plenty of room here to accent the dark, accent the light, and find our way out to those zones. What happens in a lot of beginning and intermediate painters in the studio, we see over and over again when we're teaching, is that the students are not using the full range of value. This helps you to use your full range of value very easily. You establish your midtones right away. Do that part of the painting. That's what Sargent did. He took a long time to establish the portrait tone first. And there was nothing there but just a tone. But he took a long time to gauge that with a palette knife against the flesh of the person. And then, because the person was sitting right next to his easel, so he was very, very concerned about that. Once he set that tone, the rest of it goes fast because you have your darks and your lights to push out. Dark, very dark darks, and very light. Somebody came up and commented, it looks like black up here. It's just a chromatic black. It's a black, but it's not black as we know. It's the mixture of the green, the violet, and the red. And then the other way is some pure colors, finally, just mixed with the whites, with the white itself. And, like I said, clean layering on top of each other.
Dark, moderate dark, moderate light. I have a problem with understanding the cool and the warm. So
Don't
I
worry
can't-
about that.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, then when you were working into those, you were making each of them either cool or warm by mixing another color to them as you began to develop?
Yeah, don't worry about temperature. That's where everybody gets screwed up. Don't even forget that. Throw it out the window. Because you know who taught me that? Not personally, but when I read it in his book, Charles Reed, he uses warm and cool in the light and shadow. Okay, that's good. That means something, right? So just don't worry about that goofiness. The value structure is more important than the the temperature, people. So if you have an overall tone that you set, which is useful, you could just push it one way or another and enjoy both warm and cool in the shadow, warm and cool in the light. Now you're working, right? Because now you're not hung up about these goofy rules that don't mean anything. Because this painting is comprised of warm and cool in the light, warm and cool in the dark. But the value structure is holding it together. I mean, it needs to go further, but you can see in that time while I was talking, if I wasn't recording, I'd go further. But it has a lot of stuff, elements that can be developed now, right?
Okay, I have a question, one quick question. The black that you have, is that from the tube or did you mix all of it?
That's a chromatic black.
From a tube?
No, the violet, the green, and the red together make that
Oh, okay.
chromatic. It's a chromatic black. It's a mixed black. It's not a black out of the tube.
Okay,
There's nothing wrong with using black, but you have to supplement it with a blue or red or both.
okay.
All right, thank you so much, Joseph. So we're gonna take a 15-minute break. We'll be back in your seats at 11:15.